Let me tell you why Daniel Jackson kept his job as the Cleveland Browns coach going into the 2018 season. I firmly believe that John Dorsey came here in Cleveland, had every intention of firing Daniel Jackson. I believe he laid a pinch to Jimmy Haslam and said, listen, we got to fire this clown. But I believe Jimmy Haslam did not want to fire him because he didn't want to spend $4 million a year for the next 2 or 3 years paying this clown on the payroll when they're going to have another coach coaching the team. So what I think they did is, I know Hugh says he made the choice to hire him. No, he didn't. You did not choose to hire an offensive coordinator. I think they forced him to take Todd Haley. I think they brought Todd Haley in, and I think they said, listen, if this guy fucks up, he's going to get fired, and this is going to be your job. I think that's what John Dorsey's intention was. I really believe that. So Todd Haley comes in. They force it on Hugh. They were thinking Hugh was going to resign because everybody knows Hugh Jackson doesn't want to fucking have someone run this offense. We know that. But I'm going to say this right now. Todd Haley's offense was worse than Hugh Jackson's. I'll tell you why. He did the same thing Hugh Jackson did. Hugh Jackson came in the last 2 years, ran the Cincinnati Bengals offense with the Cincinnati Bengals talent. They didn't have that in Cleveland. They didn't have the Bengals players. So Todd Haley comes in, he starts running the same Pittsburgh Steelers offense. We didn't have their players, and it didn't work. I mean, it was just terrible. And then Freddie Kitchen comes, you know what Freddie does? What do you guys like to do? What do you do best? That's what he does. Why do these guys not realize what they need to do? And a guy like Frederick XR Kitchens realizes that. So anyway, they fire Hugh Jackson when it just became too fucking chaotic. It just became too toxic with Hugh Jackson. Oh, don't forget, Hugh Jackson, like the last 3 weeks of his coaching, remember he wanted to take over play calling from Todd Haley? Now, you know damn well he did go into Jimmy Haslam's office and John Dorsey saying he wanted to take over play calling. They wanted to fire Todd Haley, but they wouldn't do that. They were probably hoping to God he was going to resign, but it became evident that he wasn't going to resign, and it just after the Steelers lost, they said, we can't do it no more because Jimmy Haslam, it's too cheap. They had to keep this idiot. They just had to fire him. And I think they fired him maybe thinking Todd Haley would take over. But I think they had a discussion with Baker Mayfield. Baker Mayfield probably said, listen, I like the guy, but I just don't like his offense. So they said, you know what, we got to just part ways with Todd. Because Todd Haley's offense was horrible. I'm sorry. Hugh Jackson was the worst coach in football. But I will say this right now. Todd Haley's offense was actually worse than Hugh Jackson's. And it wasn't even close. Hugh Jackson's offense, Hugh Jackson may have done better with Mayfield. May have, but I'm not saying he would have. But Todd Haley's was just fucking terrible. So Hugh Jackson's fired. Todd Haley's not yet. The same day they fired Todd Haley, they promote Greg Williams and Freddie Kitchens as the offense coordinator. And the Browns go 2-1 after that. I really believe that the only reason Hugh Jackson wasn't fired because they did not want to, I don't think Jimmy Haslam wanted to come off $4 million the next 2 years. So they tried to force him into resignation, and Hugh didn't do it, and it blew up in the face. Because if they fired him from the get-go, and we had a new coach this season, this would be an 8-3, 9-2 team right now. Guaranteed. Guaranteed. The only 3 teams we got beat by, really, when you think about it, were the Chiefs, the Chargers, and the Steelers. Other than that, we should have won every fucking game. You think about it. Every game that we got beat, we should have actually won. And that's because Hugh Jackson's the worst coach in NFL history. He's fucking terrible. And like I said, that's a plausible scenario when you think about it. I mean, think about that. They forced Todd Haley on Hugh Jackson. And they were hoping Hugh would resign so they wouldn't have to pay him the money. And it backfired. It is what it is. I mean, now they learned. So, because if Hugh Jackson resigns, you don't get that $4 million. The only reason he gets it is because they fired him. You see where I'm coming at? So I'm surprised. I've never heard this from like Tony Grossi or anybody else. I'm really surprised because that's what I actually think happened. I don't think Dorsey liked fucking... You can tell when he was talking about the birds landed by Josh Gordon. Dorsey didn't like Gordon. You know what I'm saying? Dorsey knew what he had in mind. He didn't even like... You could tell he didn't even like Hugh Jackson. So they were hoping that he would resign. And the forcing marriage of Todd Haley and Hugh Jackson, Hugh withstood it, and he did want him fired though because he went into Jimmy Haslam's office 2 weeks prior to him being fired. And he said, "I want to take over offense again," and it backfired. It didn't work. So it was a toxic environment. Baker Mayfield was playing. He wasn't playing like he should because Todd Haley's offense was horrible. Now you notice Freddie Kitchens' offense. Baker's looking like a fucking. Well, they did get rid of the cancer in Hugh Jackson. And they got rid of the cancer and Todd Haley too. But it was more or less Hugh Jackson. 3-36-1 is not a fucking lie. And I think Baker Mayfield holds Hugh Jackson accountable, saying, listen, this guy's a horrible coach. That's why we're not really in the playoff hunt right now because of fucking Hugh Jackson. Now, I do believe this team's galvanized because they all came in victory Monday, didn't have to come in. They all came in. They came in to work early too, Greg Williams said. I think this team wants to make a playoff run. if they beat the Texans, that's going to be a tough game. If they beat the Texans, they're going to open up a lot of eyes. That's a tough game to win. The way Texans are playing right now, that's a very tough game to win. But if they somehow do it, and I'm giving them a shot because of Baker GX Mayfield and the way this team's playing, if they do somehow win that game, that's going to open up a lot of eyes. 5-6-1. I mean, if we did not get robbed by Oakland, at least that game. Right now we're 5-5-1. But I really believe that's a plausible scenario. If you agree with me, I'd like to hear what you think about it. I mean, because it all makes sense. Why else would they bring Hugh Jackson back for another year when he sucked? Jimmy Haslam did not want to pay this guy. He was hoping he'd resign. That's why they forced Todd Haley on him. You think Hugh said, it was my decision to bring in Todd Haley? No, it wasn't. Are you kidding me, Hugh? You had no end. You wanted to run the offense because you had better players now. There's no way you would have gave up that on your own choice. You had to give up with it. They said, listen, you're going to take over. We're going to give you Todd Haley. You're going to get fired. And they were hoping he resigned. They were hoping. No, I'm sorry. They said you're forced with Todd Haley. That's what you got to do. They didn't say you're going to get fired. They said you're forced with Todd Haley. You have to hire him because you can't do it. And they were hoping he resigned, and it didn't happen. It's plausible. It's plausible. Listen, my channel is going to be based off Browns talk. And whatever. I mean, I'll talk about anything here, but you can tell the Browns are my passion because I'm a beast. And I love football. I was a 2-year veteran for the New York Jets, 89-90, looking up Charles Martin.